Hello everyone, my name is Vinod Muralidhar. I'm the Director of Product Management for Vault. First of all, thank you all for taking the time to come watch our presentation today. While I get the privilege of being able to stand in front of you and talk, there's a whole lot of different people from our engineering teams, product teams, education, product marketing, design, so many different people who are involved in making this possible. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank them before we start. So in today's presentation, I'm going to be giving you a little bit of what we've been doing in the Vault team over the last 6 months to a year, and then continue on to tell you a little bit more about what's about to come. So a little bit of the future direction. Before I started, I wanted to give you kind of a continuation of what Arman and Mitchell talked about in our keynote earlier today. Specifically, the concept of multi-cloud security in a zero-trust world. So the traditional solutions for safeguarding infrastructure have relied on or rooted in the need to secure based on IP addresses or based on hosts. What we are talking about is a dynamic infrastructure that makes it hard to do that based on the host-based security or IP-based security. Applications talking to databases, users accessing hosts and services, servers talking across clouds. These are all different dimensions of places where security becomes of paramount importance. Arman and Mitchell, you heard them talk about the 4 pillars of the multi-cloud security in a zero-trust world. The 4 pillars being machine-to-machine authentication and authorization, machine-to-machine access, human-to-machine access, and human authentication and authorization. But across these 4 pillars is one consistent theme, which is identity-driven controls. When the world has moved into a dynamic infrastructure, the concept of IP-based security does not hold good any longer, and identity-based security is the one true way to secure this infrastructure. At HashiCorp, our security model is predicated by use of identity as a way to secure access. And in order for any machine or human user to kind of communicate and contact with each other, the identity serves as kind of the mechanism we use to know whether or not they have access. Today I'll be talking specifically about Vault and how Vault helps us solve the challenges of machine-to-machine access, but also data protection in the zero-trust multi-cloud world. HashiCorp Vault enables enterprises to centrally store, access, distribute dynamic secrets, but also secure your workloads from a data protection perspective, right? And I'll be talking a little bit more about the many different use cases that we have. I'll give you a little bit about the origin stories of how Vault came into existence, how some of these use cases came into existence. So hopefully you'll find that useful. In terms of where Vault is today, this slide helps you understand trillions of secrets served, right? And millions of downloads of open source Vault, which, by the way, we have our origins in open source and continue to invest heavily in our open source functionality. Over 70% of the top 20 banks in the US use Vault. So 14 out of 20 use Vault, right? What does it really say is that they place their trust in Vault to be able to deliver security for their mission-critical applications. We're talking about banks that are running mission-critical applications, to insurance companies, to stock markets, all of these that depend on Vault in order to provide security for their services. Let me jump right in, right? So the origin story for Vault, and I like saying this story always, is when Arman and Mitchell, our founders, were building Terraform. So that's kind of where the origin for Vault happened. Is they were writing the code for Terraform as the founding team, and they realized at some point that, hey, there are so many services that need to talk to each other, communicate with each other, and therefore need to authenticate and authorize each other for those communications in order to be secure. right? And they also found that, hey, if we do that, there are a lot of secrets that are either being put into config files, being written into GitHub, into code directly, all of that as well. And so how do we avoid that? So Vault essentially was a tool that was built by our founders as they were writing Terraform. And that's exactly the use case that most of our customers and users start us off with, which is Vault as a secret store, as a way to centrally store, access, distribute your secrets across application systems and infrastructure. This diagram on your screen shows you a very, very simple example. There's a web server trying to access a database. And in order to do so, the web server either has a username and password or an API key or certificate or something that allows it to say, hey, I am this web server. I need to talk to you, the database. At this point, though, rather than storing that secret information in its code or config, what Vault allows you to do is take that information, put it in Vault, and then access it as you need it. So I need to call the database for something. I go to Vault and say, hey, I need to access DB1, right? What Vault does, it looks at you, the web server, takes your identity and says, does this web server have access and permissions to connect to this database? If it does, then it is provided that access, which the web server can then use to connect to the database. There are a lot of, this is a simple use case, right? Like this is just a secret store, and we call this the KV secret store. But the important part is what goes on behind it, right? There's a lot of it's the secrets that you put in there are encrypted, stored very securely, is entirely API access, so very, very developer friendly. And a lot of other features that I will be talking about as part of like the Vault platform. So once this is kind of the core use case that most of our customers start us off with. But very soon, they also kind of extend us into using this use case called the dynamic secrets. Really what this means is the same use case of a web server trying to access the database. Rather than having a long-lived username and password or an API key that just sits there, and again, if you lose that API key or the set of credentials, you're at risk of being exploited. What Vault allows you to do is make this entire transaction be a very ephemeral one, right? So the web server goes to Vault and says, hey, I need to access the database, and Vault will at that point create a dynamic set of credentials for you for that database and then grant access to that interaction. So again, the simple exchange you see there in the diagram, web server goes and requests credentials, Vault will create the credentials, grant it access, which then allows it to connect to that database. The advantage here is that you reduce the surface area of the attack because now there are no long-lived credentials, right? And the second part is because Vault manages this, as soon as your access is done, you set a time to live, you have a lease for that exchange. As soon as that has completed, Vault is able to completely stop access. So it is able to revoke access to that token that's granted to you or delete the credentials that were created on that database itself. Here's a second origin story, right? Vault was essentially a secret store, and we've been very successful at it. We were called out as best-in-class secrets management solutions by Gartner, right? But as we were building the secrets management solution, the platform itself had to do a lot of cryptography, things that allow us to store these secrets in a very secure fashion. Once you do that, you have to take care of the keys that you're using to encrypt these passwords and secrets. And very soon we realized, again, this is the founders team or the early Vault team, realizing, hey, there are lots of other developers who are trying to do things like this, where they're trying to secure things, not necessarily inside Vault, but in other systems. Why don't we surface our really complicated crypto and key management solutions to the outer developer world itself? And that's exactly what we did. So we launched the Transit Secrets Engine as part of Vault open source that allows you to do encryption as a service. So again, in the same example, web server wants to write data to the database. Instead, this is sensitive information. This is credit card numbers or social security. And the web server would like to write this information in an encrypted fashion. What it does, sends that information to Vault. Vault will encrypt it for you, not store any of the sensitive data in Vault itself, but send it back to the web server, which can then take it and store it in the database itself. So it is a pass-through transit encryption. Vault will take care of all of the key management and key material needed, but also the crypto part of actually encrypting and decrypting this material as you send it through us. The other way that we help in a data protection workflow is when the systems themselves do their own encryption. So Vault allows for systems that do their own encryption to offload their key management to Vault itself. So same example, web server is writing data to a database. The database does its own encryption, or it could be writing to a disk, and the disk does its own full disk encryption or transparent data encryption, right? The problem there is the crypto part is taken care of, but you're still responsible for the keys themselves. So that's where our solution comes in, a secrets engine that we call the KMIP secrets engine, because it supports the KMIP protocol, which is the key management interoperability protocol, in order to support key management for external kind of systems. We support a lot of different ones, and I'll talk about a little bit of that in our kind of roadmap, as well as things that we've done. So now that I've given you an overview of what Vault is and what Vault does, kind of our origin from a secrets management solution all the way to being a secrets management, a dynamic secrets management solution, as well as a data protection solution, right? But that's not all, right? Vault is not a security tool that you use for a small problem. It is a security platform. And what I mean by that is the core of the Vault platform has capabilities that make all of these use cases be more secure, more available, more performant, more scalable, and offers things like business continuity, right? And some of the examples are laid out here, and just like the rest of my talk, everything here is only snippets of information. There's a lot of information that you can find on our platform websites, both our Learn platform as well as vaultproject.io. So Vault offers things like a unified identity, right? In a multi-cloud scenario, we're talking about a single user having a set of credentials on AWS, another set of credentials on GitHub, another set on their Active Directory domain. Vault is able to kind of combine all of these into a single entity, and you are able to do very robust policy management and permissions management based on that entity. So it's important to have this concept of unified identity. Vault is also a very modular architecture, right? So we have a secure plugin architecture, which means that while we have a core that we built, you're also able to plug in your own secrets engine. We know of customers who built their own secrets engine because they have a custom database or something that they would like to manage Vault with. We also provide a lot of enterprise capabilities, right? So things like disaster recovery, being able to provide business continuity in the case of when your Vault cluster goes down or your primary goes down, or you have a secondary to take its place by a failover mechanism. You're also able to do things like performance replication. Again, it's horizontal scaling of your infrastructure by providing two Vault clusters, both of which can serve different regions, for example. We're also, Vault in large enterprises is usually deployed as a service, as in customers will have multiple application teams that are using Vault and a central team that manages Vault. And we provide features like namespaces that allow you to do both secure isolation as well as self-governance. From here on, I wanted to take a little bit of time to tell you about what we've been doing over the last few months and kind of the themes of what they are. Like I was saying, there's 14 out of the top 20 US banks are using Vault. And this extends to a lot of different verticals, by the way. So customers trust us with their most important sensitive information and their infrastructure. And one of the things that we want to focus on and will continue to focus on is making the ease of operating Vault and the building of that platform to make it secure and resilient and robust. So that's going to be a continued theme of how we want to build our roadmap. We also realize we are a cog in the wheel as it comes to your infrastructure. While we like to think Vault is the center of everything, we also know that, hey, as a DevOps admin, as somebody who's running this infrastructure, Vault is only one of the many pieces that you have to take care of. And so for that reason, building up our ecosystem and being first-class citizens on top of platforms that our customers have standardized on, whether it's cloud providers, whether it's runtime environments, we want to make sure that Vault has a native integration as a first-class citizen on those platforms. We also want to focus on these data protection workflows. Like I was saying earlier, our transit secrets engine has been kind of our data protection mechanism for the longest time. But in the last year, we've introduced an advanced data protection module that offers a lot more in that space. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that as well. This screen you see right now, there's a lot of features listed. So in the platform, for example, we focused on things like monitoring. Again, as an operator who's running Vault, the most important thing is being able to monitor Vault for how it's operating. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail as well. Providing storage, and integrated storage, we'll talk about that too. Improving our replication, improving the way that we do replication and how we show that to the operator. And there's a lot more that we did in the platform. And I will be talking about some of those in a lot more detail. When it comes to the ecosystem, again, we understand, like I said earlier, it's not just forward and future looking. Yes, we want to be the cutting edge solution as it relates to secrets management. We want to work on Kubernetes and things like serverless in the future, but at the same time, knowing that your infrastructure is actually rooted in an on-prem environment, you have things like, for example, in this slide you see support for Active Directory, OpenLDAP, or Microsoft SQL Server. Those are kind of the things that we know you have to deal with in reality. So our roadmap for ecosystem constantly is one leg in the future, but also making sure that this infrastructure suits your needs today and not just for tomorrow. We know that will help you kind of transition into the future as you kind of evolve and make your journey toward the cloud itself. Lastly, the data protection. Like I was telling you, the ADP module was just released last year, and we've been making a lot of improvements to that, and I'll be talking a little bit more detail about those as well. Let me start with the platform pieces, right? So we introduced in Vault 1.5 a Splunk app that does telemetry and audit log data. So the Splunk app is includes sample dashboards for both DevOps and security use cases. All of the metrics that we surface in dashboards like this are available both in our open source, but also available for anybody to build dashboards on, right? But what we wanted to show is the possibility of and kind of recommendations of how to monitor Vault really. So you see a list of dashboards listed there. The summary one will show you kind of the cluster metrics, and all of these, by the way, you can filter based on either namespaces or auth methods or particular policies and things like that. The ops metrics talk about cluster health, request handling time, operation failure, leadership change, memory usage, replication metrics, things like that. The usage metrics actually talk about the number of tokens and entities, auth methods used to create tokens, tokens used, again, filtered by those different metrics that I was talking about. The storage environment, so whether it's console or integrated storage, we do a lot of metrics around that as well. The next important one is Vault and integrated storage. So traditionally, Vault is, like I said, offers pluggable storage, which means that we allow you to use any storage you want. But for Enterprise Vault, we support console as a backend storage. That comes with the notion that you are required to kind of use two systems for your deployment of Vault. What integrated storage does is it offers storage within Vault and eliminates the need to both set up, manage, and monitor Vault itself. So that's an important thing that we've introduced. Has been introduced as part of 1.4, but we continue to kind of improve on it by adding things like in the future, Cloud Auto Join, which allows for auto discovery of peers, and especially useful like when IP addresses are not static anymore. We also will introduce snapshot agents. That's a command that will start a process that will take snapshots and save them locally or push them to an external storage. So we're working not just on making things easier and simpler for you, but continuing to build on top of that as well. Wanted to jump quickly into the ecosystem. So the Vault, Kubernetes for us, we know is most of our customers have a lot of our customers have adopted Kubernetes, and it's something that they've been asking us about. So late last year or middle of last year is when we started kind of our journey in making Vault and Kubernetes be first-class partners or have a really native integration. The first thing customers asked us was how to install and run Vault on Kubernetes. Doing YAML files and custom config was really, really hard. So we started with building a Helm chart. We followed up with what we call the Vault-K8s binary, which is basically a way for Vault-unaware applications. So when you have legacy applications that are being migrated to a Kubernetes pod environment, how do you ensure that they are able to use Vault without actually having to go change their code with Vault APIs, right? So Vault it's a sidecar approach to being able to inject secrets into your pod without actually having to change the underlying code of the systems themselves. And later we kind of in March of this year introduced the Helm chart for Vault Enterprise, and then followed it up in the 1.5 release with support for the OpenShift container platform. And in the future, we will continue to enhance that by adding support for the CSI driver as well as the Red Hat certified container image itself. So a lot of improvements being made, but the idea is, and I think in one of the earlier slides, we saw that you had 600,000 plus downloads in just the last few months for this binary. So it's something that we've embarked on and we will continue to build upon. Last set of kind of slides I want to talk about is our foray into data protection itself. So the initial launch of our advanced data protection happened with what we call the KMIP secrets engine, which is basically a way for you to do external key management, right? I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slides. But in Vault 1.4, in March of this year, we introduced this concept of transform secrets engine. And the scenario here is that when you have PII data, sensitive information that needs to be cryptographically protected while preserving essential information about the data, for example, the format of that data, right? This helps minimize cost, reduce complexity, and maintain compliance with industry standards like PCI DSS, where you want the credit card information to be stored in as a 16-digit number, but is fully encrypted, right? So in Vault 1.4, we introduced a transform secrets engine that offers both format preserved encryption, and that's the visual you see there, as well as masking. So being able to mask kind of your credit card number into a series of characters of a single nature. In the future, we are introducing the idea of tokenization. So tokenization, again, does the same thing, replaces sensitive values with unique token values. This is more kind of a random set of characters that are unrelated to the original value. And this is, again, something that a lot of our customers, especially ones that have needs for compliance requirements around not being able to recover, not being able to use an encryption or crypto format, rather use a tokenization that's more kind of a random format. Lastly, enterprise key management. I talked to you about this very briefly. We do offer, for systems that do external encryption, a way to manage their keys using the KMIP protocol. This was introduced last year. We did a bunch of certifications this year with NetApp, VMware, MongoDB, and others. And in the future, we plan to kind of extend this to be a key management solution for cloud providers as well. So in our upcoming release, you will see our support for Azure Key Vault. So being able to support that, storing the root of trust for your key management needs on the Azure Key Vault being supported by Vault itself. I know that was a lot of information. We've talked about a lot today. I wanted to summarize by saying the Vault roadmap, essentially how we think about building this product is by focusing entirely on the end-to-end workflows and making it simpler and easier for both our operators and our developers. Building on the ecosystem, again, knowing that we're a cog in the wheel, we're a small piece in that larger infrastructure. Being able to double down our investment in advanced data protection. And I know you heard about it in the keynote, but also kind of offering a first-class managed service experience with Vault on HCP, which is our HCP Vault launch that happens today. That's all I had for you today. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to my talk today. I hope that you have a really good conference. Thank you so much.